Hello everyone, Salex here. Welcome to this new tutorial on creating and managing your first Docker with Nginx server on Linux. In this video we'll learn how to use various Docker commands to handle a container, so let's dive right into it. Now, before we get started, let's open up first the terminal and see what we need to do if you don't have Docker in our system. So if you don't have Docker, stop right here and execute this command, snap install Docker. It installs automatically Docker in your system and it takes always the latest version, so don't worry about that. We'll be using the version Docker. If we put Docker minus B, we can see that we are using the version 24.0.5. The mainly the ones that care it's the 24, so don't worry about that. Mainly the comments that don't change, so we're gonna be using that. Now, if we execute this command, docker run dash dash name nginx server dash p 8080 80 dash dash detach nginx, it allows us to create a nginx container with the nginx server pre-configured in a basic way. So let's see what actually this command means and each part of it. Now, let's dive right into details. Docker run allows us to create and run the container that we are going to create, that is an Nginx server. You can see here we're using the image Nginx, and we're going to assign it with the parameter name Nginx server, and with dash p we are going to open our local port on our machine 8080 to the port 80 on the Nginx server container, so they are connected between each of them. If we in our machine later we connect with HTTPS to 8080, we are gonna see the actual thing that is running on the 80 port on the container. And lastly, we have detach. Detach allows us to run our container in the back and the command we are going to use, so it doesn't freeze the terminal if the process stops or it's actually running, because if we execute some long process, it's gonna freeze the terminal until the process stops and ends. So if we do detach, it runs in background, so we can do other things in the terminal at the same time. And lastly, as I said, Nginx is the image for our container. Now we want to know if our Docker that we just run is actually running. So we're gonna use the command docker ps. If we use just docker ps, again it's gonna prompt the error, so just put sudo in it. Now we're gonna see our Nginx server that it's actually running, because that's what docker ps does. Shows the actual containers that are running, not the stopped ones. But of course, we like to know what stopped containers we have. So we're gonna do docker ps dash a. It means all, of course, but if just adding dash a, it works. And we're gonna see if our container is stopped, status up about a minute. It's the time that it has been running. And don't worry about that. We're gonna see all the running and stopped containers now. Let's get our hands dirty. We'll execute some of these subcommands with our Nginx container and see what happens. If we use the docker run command I presented before, this command is the cornerstone of Docker, allowing us to create and run containers based on specified images. So if we try to execute this command, we're gonna find this error. Don't worry, it's easily solved by just adding sudo to the start of the command. If we now try to execute, it's gonna pull the latest image of Nginx from the Docker repositories. So don't worry about that. Now, before we get started, let's open up first a terminal and see what we need to do if you don't have Docker in our system. So if you don't have Docker, stop right here and execute this command, snap install Docker. It installs automatically Docker in your system and it takes always the latest version, so don't worry about that. We'll be using the version Docker. If we put Docker minus B, we can see that we are using the version 24.0.5. The mainly the ones that care it's the 25 24, so don't worry about that. Mainly the commands that don't change, so we're gonna be using that. Now, if we execute this command, docker run dash dash name nginx server dash p 8080 80 dash dash detach nginx, it allows us to create a nginx container with the nginx server pre-configured in a basic way. So let's see what actually this command means and each part. Now the next three commands are currently the easiest ones to manage our Docker container and its status. If we put sudo docker start and nginx server, it's gonna start our container, call it nginx server. If it goes well, it's gonna reply with the name of the container. Then if we want to stop it, it's so easy. We just need to change start to stop and it stops. If we do the command we learned before, docker ps, we're gonna see, sorry, my bad. Sorry, it's isn't gonna appear here because it's stopped. If we do docker ps minus a as we saw before, we're gonna see that its actual status is exited. So now it's stopped. But if we found some troubles and our Docker gets stuck or something, we can do sudo docker restart and it starts and stops our Nginx server. Well, all the containers, but you understand me now. Nginx server, it restarts the container, and if we do sudo docker ps, now it's actually running. Now, as I said, we may found some troubles with our Docker. Of course, always there's a log for it, this, and we can do docker logs to see the log of our container. In this case, nginx server, we're gonna add the sudo nginx server, and it's gonna show all the log for our Docker container. This might maybe, well, it's so big because I'm showing you, okay? But don't worry, it's gonna be easy to find if you use grep, for example, so don't worry about that. You can also redirect the output to a file and edit it or view it in most in a more calm way. So don't worry. Oh, what the fuck? Okay. Now we're gonna see another useful command that it's rm remove in this case. When it's time to say goodbye to a container, the rm command removes it, freeing up resources on our system and its space and everything. The Docker container disappears, so don't worry. It's like the rm for folders and files. And let's see what happens if we use sudo docker rm and our container name, in this case nginx server. We can see that we can't remove the docker while it's running. So don't worry about that. We're gonna just stop our container before deleting it, and once it's stopped, we're gonna delete the container. Now, as it has replied with the name, that means the container is already deleted. So if we do sudo docker ps minus a, we're gonna see the container does not longer appear here as it has been deleted. But we have another command because we don't use only containers. We also have images. Images represents the system, as I may say, the template we're gonna use. So if we do sudo docker images, we're gonna see all the images that we have. As we did at the start, we pulled the Nginx image from the repository. So now we have to delete it, of course. We're gonna copy the image ID so we can delete it. And we're gonna do sudo docker rmi to delete it. Remove image, of course, it means. And if we paste here the docker image ID, it's gonna remove the keys and the image. So that's everything for the comments. And that's a wrap for this tutorial, folks. We've learned how to manage Docker with Nginx Server, from creating the container to managing and removing it using various Docker commands. I encourage you to continue exploring Docker as it can be incredibly beneficial for your projects and workflows. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it useful. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, and remember that you can leave any doubts in the comments below. See you in the next video!